You did everything right for retirement. You paid off the house, you saved, you planned for this. But half of retirees did the exact same thing and they still ran out of money in their 80s. Today, I'm breaking down the terrible situation retirees are facing and the decision that's putting them at risk. After 23 years in this market, I'll show you one move that can change your outcome and protect your retirement. Let's dive in. The national retirement crisis. All right, here's a number for you, $410,000. That's the median net worth for Americans between the ages of 65 and 74. Some people hear this number and feel pretty good about it. On the surface, that sounds solid. Like, okay, these people planned ahead. Because what's happening right now across the country is a whole different thing. Because it doesn't work quite as well as it sounds. About half of it is in home equity. So right away, the big part of that net worth is tied up only in the house. Now that number doesn't feel as strong because that money isn't showing up in your checking account every month. It's not paying the electric bill. It's not covering groceries. It's just sitting there in the value of your home while your expenses keep coming in. So once you split that out, the whole picture changes. You're looking at somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 in savings you can actually use. And that's the money you're living on day to day. Now line that up with the actual cost of retirement. The Bureau of Labor Statistics puts retired household spending at about $60,000 a year. That's a pretty normal baseline of how people are living. Social Security will help. The average check is about $2,000 per month per person. For a couple, that usually lands somewhere in the high 30,000s to low 40,000s a year combined. So you've got some income coming in, and that helps, but it doesn't cover all your expenses. And that gap is where the pressure starts to build. You've got about $200,000 saved. You're spending around $60,000 a year. Social Security fills part of that, but not all of it. So each year, you're pulling from savings to cover the difference. Now, those savings don't stretch as far as people expect. It's pretty common to see retirees running out of money in their 80s. That's how far it tends to go. A lot of people don't even make it that far before it runs out. And before you think this doesn't apply to you, you've saved more than the average, keep this in mind. Nearly half of all retirees have less than half in savings that they can actually use. On top of that, the National Council on Aging found that about 80% of households with older adults are either struggling right now or at serious risk of falling into financial hardship. That means they can't really handle a big hit like losing a spouse, a health issue, or needing long-term care. That's a tough reality, and this is what most people are dealing with. So the money is in the house, but not in their hands. Now, the next question that comes up pretty quickly is why more people aren't actually doing something about it. At this point, most people start wondering what to do about this. If you're running the numbers yourself and trying to figure out if a move to New Hampshire makes sense, feel free to reach out. I cover the Lakes region with my team, and my team also covers the mountains and the Seacoast. This is what we talk about every day. My contact info is in the description below. All right, let's keep going. Why most retirees can't fix it. When you run those numbers and realize a big chunk of your net worth is sitting in the house, the obvious move is to sell and use the equity. That's how you turn it into cash you can actually use and give yourself flexibility. But that's not what most people do, and I get it. People grow up with the goal of paying off the house and staying there. It feels safe. You've got a place that's yours, and that gives you a sense of security. That's why selling the house doesn't even come up for most people. So they just don't make the move, and that happens a lot. Most retirees never relocate at all. In 2024, a little over 250,000 people moved for retirement, and you've got around 60 million Americans age 65 or older. So when people decide to stay, that decision carries forward year after year. But once you cross the border, your income starts to stretch in a different way. I'll show you why in a minute. Now here's the thing. The house doesn't get cheaper. Property taxes go up. Insurance goes up. And as the home gets older, things start to break. Roof, heating systems, appliances, things you can't ignore. That's real money and it keeps coming. Besides, groceries are higher, utilities are higher, everything costs more than it did a few years ago. Prices didn't come back down, they just stopped rising as fast. So your monthly expenses are climbing. And at the same time, the value of the house keeps going up on paper, but that money is still locked in the house. So you're in this position of where the asset is growing, but your cash flow is getting tighter. and that gap keeps getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, you do have more equity every year, but the equity's just sitting there, growing on paper until you die. The house became the retirement plan, and for most people, it's a retirement plan that can never actually be spent. Now, this is happening all across the country, but there's one area that makes things harder for retirees, and that's Massachusetts. The way the numbers stack up there puts more pressure on retirees than in most other places. Someone in their early 60s, house worth close to $1 million, retirement accounts are in good shape. On paper, it looks solid, but the cost to stay in that house starts to add up fast. Massachusetts has a flat 5% income tax on most income. This includes interest and dividends, long-term capital gains, and short-term capital gains are taxed even higher at 8.5%. So now the income from their investments is getting taxed every year. On top of that, property taxes here are some of the higher ones in the region. And the bills have been climbing, averaging well over $7,000 a year for a single family home. So you've got income getting taxed, and at the same time, the house itself is getting more expensive to keep. Add to that, home values are high. In Greater Boston and the Metro West, single family homes have been sitting between the high 700,000s to over $1 million, depending on the town. In June last year, the median crossed $1 million. It's not that they don't get it, they do, but everything around them keeps them from making the move. My family is here, doctors are here, my routine is here. Their life they've built for over 30 years is here. So for most people, leaving doesn't really stay on the table. They keep living in the same house, same routine, same place. And year after year, the cost of keeping that house keeps going up. Nothing dramatic happens all at once. It just gets a little higher, a little tighter, and eventually people get stuck. And that's the cruelest part of the Massachusetts retirement trap. The home that makes you feel secure is also what keeps you stuck. But just over the border, the math starts to work in our favor. Why New Hampshire is a different conversation. Most people hear New Hampshire and they think colder weather, maybe a quieter place. What they don't think about is how your income changes once you cross the border. Massachusetts taxes dividends and interest at 5%. So when your investments produce income, part of that goes to the state every year. New Hampshire removed that tax. As of January of last year, it's gone. So that income stays with you. Take a simple example. A $500,000 investment earning 3 to 4% generates about $15,000 to $20,000 a year. In Massachusetts, that's roughly $750 to $1,000 in state taxes each year. In New Hampshire, that doesn't get taxed at a state level. Now take $1 million invested at around 3.5%. That's about $35,000 a year in income. In Massachusetts, about $1,750 goes to the state each year. In New Hampshire, that will stay with you. The difference adds up over time. You get to keep that money year after year and it builds up. Over 20 to 25 years, it turns into a real amount. But wait until you see the numbers side by side, because the difference is bigger than people expect. We'll break that down in a bit. Now, Social Security isn't taxed at the state level in either place, but there are other everyday differences people don't think about. New Hampshire doesn't have a sales tax. So every time you buy something, whether it's a car, furniture, or just everyday stuff, you're not paying an extra percentage on top. Over time, that adds up too. And when you're looking at housing, you can sell a place in the Metro West for around $800,000 and then buy something similar or even better in New Hampshire where the median price is in the low 500,000s. After everything's paid, you could be left with an extra $100,000 to $200,000 in cash. That's money you can invest. And now that money's generating income that isn't getting taxed at the state level. So now you're paying less in taxes, you've got more cash you can actually use, and you're still in New England. Same seasons, same kind of lifestyle, and you're still close to family. You're not going across the country here. From Boston, the Lakes region is about a 2-hour drive. The Seacoast is about an hour. It's really just a move over the border. Most people think of retirement relocation as going to Florida, but for a Massachusetts retiree, the smarter move might be a shorter drive north. The Snowbird Strategy, New Hampshire's unique advantage. New Hampshire in winter is no joke. It's cold, it's long, there's a lot of snow. That's what most people picture, and that's the reason they don't even consider moving here in the first place. They imagine being here all winter, year after year, dealing with that heavy snow. But that's not how a lot of people live here. They plan the whole year around it. For a lot of retirees, the year naturally splits into 2 parts. New Hampshire becomes home for most of the year, spring, summer, and fall. You've got the lake, the foliage, the space, and you're still close to family, still in the same rhythm of life you've always had. Then winter comes, and they head somewhere warmer for a few months, usually Florida or somewhere along the coast, somewhere they can get out of the cold and slow things down. And then when the weather changes, they come right back. That's what people call the snowbird setup. Up here, it's pretty much the norm, and it works for a reason beyond just the lifestyle. When people sell in Massachusetts, they free up equity, and that's what makes the second home doable. At the same time, the main house becomes easier to carry. Less overall costs, less pressure month to month, and a little more room in the budget. And because that invested money isn't getting taxed at the state level here, it stretches further than it would have in Massachusetts. So you've got equity from the move, a lower cost base on the main home, an income that stays with you instead of getting chipped away. That's what makes the second place realistic. Now try to do the same thing for Massachusetts. You're still carrying a higher value property taxes, insurance, maintenance, all of it. And that keeps pulling from your budget every single year. Then you try to add a second place on top of that, and it gets tight pretty quickly. In New Hampshire, the structure is different. You keep everything people care about. Summer's here, fall's here, being close to family, still in the same part of the country. And when winter comes, you leave for a bit. Spend a few months somewhere warmer, and then you come back. And if you want to know what living in New Hampshire is actually like, stick with me. I'll show you in a minute the different lifestyles here and which one fits you. Now, New Hampshire doesn't ask you to give up anything. You're just setting it up in a way that gives you more flexibility. So let's actually run the numbers, because when you compare it side by side, the difference isn't small. What the math looks like after the move. Nobody sits down with their financial advisor and puts a line item in the spreadsheet for where they live. But for a Massachusetts retiree, that line item might be the most important one on the page. Here's what this actually looks like when you do the math. Take a couple, both retired, Social Security bringing in about $40,000 a year combined, about $300,000 in savings they can actually use, and a home in Metro West somewhere in the mid to high $800,000. On paper, that looks okay, but run it forward. They're spending about $60,000 a year. Social Security covers most of it, but not all. So they're pulling maybe $15,000 to $20,000 a year from savings to cover the gap. Meanwhile, the house keeps pulling from the budget too. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, that money is going out every single year. Their investment income is getting taxed at 5% by Massachusetts. Their savings are shrinking, and the timeline runs out in their early 80s. Now move that same couple to New Hampshire. They sell their Massachusetts home, they buy something similar in the Lakes region, somewhere in the mid to high fives. After everything, they walk away with an extra $150,000 to $200,000 in cash. That money gets invested. Now instead of $300,000 working for them, they've got closer to $450,000 to $500,000. That portfolio, generating 3 to 4% a year, is producing somewhere between $14,000 to $20,000 in annual income. And in New Hampshire, none of that gets taxed at the state level. So the gap between what Social Security covers and what they need to spend gets smaller. Sometimes it closes almost entirely. Nothing about their life has changed, just a different address. And when you run that forward, the timeline looks completely different. The money doesn't run out at the same place. But here's the thing, New Hampshire isn't one place, and where you land matters as much as the move itself. New Hampshire isn't one thing, it's four. This is where people get it wrong when they look at New Hampshire. They've got one picture in their head, usually something they saw years ago driving through, and they base the whole decision on that. And if that version doesn't feel right, they just cross the whole state off. But that's not how it works. New Hampshire isn't one place. It's really four completely different lifestyles all sitting inside the same state. The Lakes region really revolves around the water. You've got Lake Winnipesaukee. It's huge, 72 square miles, over 250 islands, and the towns around it like Wolfboro and Meredith aren't just summer spots. They've got real downtowns, places to eat, things going on all year. So yeah, it has that vacation feel, but people live here full time, and more of them are doing that every year. If you picture yourself near the water at a slower pace, but still with things to do and places to go, this is a really good fit. Now the Seacoast has a different feel. This is for someone who wants to be by the ocean, but still wants that energy. Places you can walk to, good restaurants open every day. Portsmouth's kind of the center of it. It's got a real good downtown, a lot going on, over 100 places to eat and stay active year-round. Prices are higher right there, so a lot of people end up just outside of it. Dover, Rochester, areas around Exeter, where you still get the same access without paying that Portsmouth price. And you're still about an hour to Boston from most of that area, which for a lot of people makes a big difference. The White Mountains are for someone who really wants to feel away from it all. You've got skiing, hiking, a lot more space, and a lot more quiet. North Conway is kind of the hub. You've got shops, restaurants, easy access to the mountains. Lincoln's a bit smaller, more of a ski town feel, especially in the winter. Prices up here are usually lower than other parts of the state, so the equity from the Massachusetts sale goes further. And if that outdoor lifestyle is actually what you want, you're not giving anything up by being here. Then you've got Southern New Hampshire, which usually feels the most familiar if you're coming from Metro West. The towns feel similar. Places like Bedford, Windham, Hollis. It's that same kind of setup people are used to. Manchester gives you a bit more going on. Restaurants, some nightlife, an art scene, plus its own airport. You're still close to Boston, still close to your routine, not really changing your day-to-day all that much. But you're on the New Hampshire side of the border, and that changes what your tax return looks like at the end of the year. And when you want the lakes or the mountains, you're about 90 minutes away from both. New Hampshire has 4 different ways to live, and when you find the right one, it just works. Things are getting tough for retirees right now, even for people who did everything right, but it doesn't have to go that way for you. A move to New Hampshire can change how this plays out. If you're a Massachusetts retiree ready to run the real numbers on what this move looks like for your specific situation, shoot me an email at adam@thedowgroup.com. We're the #1 team in New Hampshire, and that's exactly what we do. If you're sold on New Hampshire, but not sure where to land, I've linked a video breaking down the 7 towns I'd personally retire in. And the one at the end surprises most people. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.